Hey YouTubers, today I'm working on my air conditioning compressor. I was getting a strange smell and weird kind of rattling, grinding kind of sound coming from the engine bay. Couldn't figure out what it was. I thought maybe it was the water pump, and then it so the power steering pump sits right above the AC, and I thought it was the water pump. The power steering pump. But then I started actually one day, it was sounding really bad and my AC stopped working. I thought maybe I was losing refrigerant, and I went and looked under the engine bay and I could actually see the front cover of the AC of the AC compressor had came off, and there was a little bit of smoke coming from there. So I'm pretty sure that is the problem. If that's, even if it's not the only problem, it is the major problem. And so I came home, parked the car right away, ordered a new AC unit, and I'm gonna take it off and replace it. Now the AC is on the driver's side of the engine compartment on the bottom, so I'm gonna have to jack the car up, remove the bottom engine cover to get to it and get it off. I've never done one of these, so I'm probably gonna take you guys on this adventure with me. And as usual, if you like the videos I make, click like so I know I can make more of the same. And if you want to see more when I do make them, click subscribe so that you'll see when I make more videos. So let's get into it. So first thing I did was I removed this little cover here that goes here. And then I looked down in here. So if you look here, you see this. This is a 17 millimeter right here that I have, and that is on the fitting for the tensioner pulley, because I'm about to remove the belt. But before I remove the belt, I took my time and took my pen and paper and I drew out a diagram. So at this point, if you've done this, if you started taking this apart and you didn't do what I did, this is going to help you out. So I'm going to show you real quick. This is the crank. The belt goes around the crank over to the tensioner pulley, over to the idler pulley. So the tensioner pulley has adjustment, it's spring loaded. The idler pulley just sits there, and then it goes down and around the alternator and up over the water pump, over the power steering, around the AC, and back to the crank. So alternator, idler pulley, water pump, power steering, air condition. This is what I'm taking off. It's on the bottom on the driver's side. Crank pulley and tensioner pulley. This is the one that's spring loaded right here. So if you needed that, there it is. I made sure and draw that out because I don't want to be messing with this belt trying to figure out where it came from, because under the hood there is no belt diagram. Some vehicles have it, some don't. This is a don't. So I got that little piece. I would have really liked to have the AC compressor here present and accounted for before I started taking this apart, but it's on the way for delivery. I don't have it yet. Hopefully it'll be here by the time I get everything off. The reason why I would like to have it is because then you see exactly where the bolts are located on the compressor, so you know what you're looking for. If it's 3 bolts, 4 bolts. To the best of what I could find on the internet, I think it's 3 bolts, an electrical connector, and of course your AC lines. It's buried, so this is what you can see right here on the belt. That's your power steering. It's buried down under there, under that. This is the fitting. This is the high pressure fitting that goes to the power steering. But yeah, it's down underneath that. So I got to disconnect everything, jack the car up, remove the bottom engine cover so I can get to it and start taking it off. That part is pretty straightforward, but if I run into anything that looks like it would be an issue, I'm going to record it real quick so you guys can see what's going on. So yeah, these are all the screws that hold that lower piece in place. I took this off. I got jack stands on both sides. The AC compressor is over here, and I could probably have gotten away with just jacking up this side, but I think future Trevor is gonna thank past Trevor for jacking up both sides of the car instead of just one. My only concern right now is that I feel like this cooler, this oil cooler, might be in the way of me getting that AC compressor out, because if you look here, so here's the oil cooler and the AC compressor is above it. Yeah. And so there are, like I said, there's one bolt there. It looks like there's one bolt below it, right here, above that oil cooler. And then, I don't know, maybe there's one all the way in the back. I don't know, but either way, the problem is, I feel like this oil cooler is gonna have to come out. It's gonna be a problem. So, yeah, I'm gonna try, because I don't see how this AC compressor would have room to come out unless it came out through this hole on the side here. I mean, if I could get the bolts off, I could probably get it out of this hole on the side. Just remove this bracket right here, and then I'd have room to slide it out the side if I can get these hoses out of the way. So I think I'll try that first. So let me zoom out a little bit so you can see. And so you'll see, here's the oil pan, here's the oil cooler, the AC compressor is above it, and then there's this bracket here. So I'm gonna try to remove this bracket. It's just got two bolts holding it in place, and see how much access that gives me. See if it gives me room to remove the AC compressor, because if it does, that would be absolutely fantastic. So on we go. Here we are. So this is the pulley for the AC compressor. As you can see, it's not attached to the AC compressor. It came off completely. Luckily, there were these ridges. There are ridges on the inside, and there are ridges on the snout of the compressor. I'll show you in a second, so that when all of this just kind of catastrophically failed, the wheel didn't come flying off. But once I took the belt off, this just fell off. Now, there are some non-negotiables as far as taking this off. The first non-negotiable is that oil cooler that I'm pointing to right now, that's bolted to the side of the engine, has to come off. There's absolutely no way to get that compressor out without removing that oil cooler. Also, the upper power steering hose that goes into there has to come off. And once you remove those two, you can lower the compressor to disconnect the AC lines. Now, getting that oil cooler off, there's a T30 Torx in the back, and it's almost impossible to get to. What I had to do was put a T30 on this swivel, 1/4-inch swivel, and use that to twist that T30. Once I got it loose, I could get on there, and I used a slightly longer, I used this extension, which is about 2 inches, with the T30, and I was able to twist it off by hand. But you can't break it loose. There's just no room. And at first I thought that I could move this bracket, and it's kind of hard to distinguish what's what, but that aluminum bracket. But once I investigated, I realized that's not a bracket, that's the entire cradle holding the engine up. It goes straight across to the other side and goes up. So that, removing that was not an option. So what I did was, like I said, remove this oil cooler, remove that AC hose, so I'm gonna put, that power steering hose, so I'm gonna have to put power steering fluid. And once you remove that oil cooler, oil is gonna drip everywhere, which is why this tub is here. I collected the majority of it. This is the front of the AC compressor. It just catastrophically failed, will not twist at all. So initially I was considering buying a clutch rebuild kit. I'm glad I didn't go that route, because it's not the clutch, the whole thing is just seized up. So now I have it unplugged, I have it sitting down there, and it's just a matter of removing the AC lines and then taking it out. And then once I do that, then I will have to reinstall that and then put back in the power steering hose, and then put back in the oil cooler that mounts to the side of the engine, and then button everything up. So yeah, that's where I am. If you look at that and you're thinking, well, I can work around those hoses on that oil cooler, you probably can work around the hoses, but you can't work around the oil cooler. The oil cooler has to come out. Unless this engine is sitting on the ground, that oil cooler is going to have to come out, and that power steering hose is also going to have to come out, because it's kind of wrapped around the bottom of the AC compressor and makes it really hard to try to get out. So that's where we are. I'm not in a rush right now because I'm still waiting for my AC compressor, my replacement, to arrive. I don't want to undo those lines and just leave them exposed and risk contaminants getting in it if it's sitting for a couple hours. So I'm just gonna leave it like that and wait it out till my AC compressor comes, and then I will be putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. At least that's the objective. So we'll see. I got my two compressors side by side, and I'm eyeballing everything, and everything appears to be identical, which is good. That's the objective here. Of course, we can tell which one is new and which one is not. This is the point of failure, and I thought maybe the bearing in this had completely seized up, and that's why this pulley shredded the internals. There's supposed to be a bushing in here, a damper, and then it's connected to a snap ring on the front, and it's connected to the shaft, but it's not. The compressor itself still spins freely. It actually spins really smooth. So I'm kind of confused as to why that pulley completely failed, but it did. And so that's what brought this one about. But when you get these compressors, mine had a big note that said this compressor does not have any oil in it. Now, you can buy some that have oil in them, and you can buy some that won't have oil in them. If you buy one like this that doesn't have oil in it, but your system was properly charged and running properly before, I would highly recommend you only put about 4 ounces in there. So I bought this bottle of compressor oil. It's an 8-ounce bottle. I used half, so I'm left with 4. And when you put the oil in here, this is not one of those compressors where you can turn the wheel in the front with the clutch and make it circulate. This is always turning the internals, and then there's this pigtail that moves a swash plate in the back and makes everything actuate. So what you do is you fill this with oil in the back on the big port, and it'll fill right up, and you'll be like, I can't get the oil in there. Well, all you have to do is, this is a relief valve. So I'll show you real quick. So this relief valve, what you do is you fill this up with oil, and then you can just take anything, a screwdriver. I take this pencil for demonstration purposes, and you reach in there and you push that down like so, and it lets the oil flow into the internals of the compressor. So you just fill it, press that, fill it, press it until you have the right amount of oil in there. Once you have that in there, you don't need to put anything in from this side. You just put it in there. I tried turning this a little bit. I don't think it made a difference without electricity going to this pigtail, but I turned it anyway. And so then I cleaned off my ports really good. I sprayed the hell out of them with brake cleaner before I took them off the old compressor, and then I wiped them down as good as I can. Make sure that the O-rings aren't snagged or torn or anything like that. I should have just put new O-rings, but I didn't. I don't have new O-rings, so that's what it is. The next step in the process is to reinstall those hoses and tuck this back up where it was. Reinstall the hoses, put that plug back in. This plug actually slides onto here and snaps into place. But yeah, so plug this in, put my hoses back in there, and reinstall the compressor. And then once I get that installed, then I reinstall my power steering hose or the oil cooler, either one. But the point is that the compressor has to go in first before anybody else gets to dance. And then once I do that, I'm gonna put everything back together, charge it up, and hopefully it'll work. On the home stretch now, so I got my power steering hooked back up. That's that right there. And I got the AC compressor installed and hooked up. It's there, all 3 bolts are installed. The AC lines are installed and tightened. The electrical connector is connected. That everything went exactly the way it should. The only thing left to do now is this oil cooler. I'm leaving this for last because I'm gonna be extra meticulous with this for no other reason than I don't want to do this and then have it leak on me. So it's just these flat O-rings that seal up against there, and it has 2 bolts, one here, yeah, so there's 1 bolt here, another bolt there, 1 bolt up top, and another one up top, and then there's supposed to be one that goes to the oil pan, which I cut off when I was trying to change the oil pan gasket, but it wasn't leaking, so that should be fine. So I'm going to clean this up really good with a rag, and then clean up those seals on the oil cooler really good with a rag, and then put it back together. It's just that one in the back there is a pain. It is a royal pain. So when you're reinstalling this, these bolts that hold the AC compressor, those are 13 millimeter, one in the back and then one on top. 3 of those holding the AC compressor, and the AC line fittings, those are a T45 Torx. And then on the power steering, that is a 5 millimeter hex driver that goes on that power steering fitting. And when you're running the power steering fitting back up, you'll be tempted to run it between the lines because that seems like a convenient place. It loops around. This is the power steering line. It loops around the front and goes up. And if you do it right, then when you get around to the top and it's time to put it in, it should just slide in. Like, you should be able to just put your thumb on it and slide it down into place. If you got to wiggle and do all kinds of crazy stuff, then it's probably not lined up right. It should just slide in there, and then you got to tighten it up. So just be mindful of that. You don't want to mess that up trying to put it in there, and don't force it, don't hit it or anything. It should just, you should be able to just put your thumb on the top of it and push it in and go thunk and slide down in place, and then you just tighten up the 2 5 millimeter Torx, not Torx, you know, hex drivers. So I'm gonna work on that oil cooler, and once I'm done with that, then it'll be time for the sway bar to reinstall, and that'll be all the hard part. And then I got this bracket right here, one of the first things that I took out. But yeah, so as of right now, the AC compressor can be removed. You just gotta get that oil cooler off and get that that front power steering line out of the way, and then you just drop it out the bottom. That's the procedure as far as I know. So the deed is done, car is running. I already been under there and looked for leaks. There are no leaks. I would highly recommend that if you're doing this job, take your time, dedicate an entire day. As you can see, it's dark outside, it's 8 p.m. I worked on this from about 1 o'clock until 3, and then I stopped, and then when the part came in at 5 o'clock, I started back again, and then I worked till 8. So I would say all in, it took me 5 hours, 6 hours to do this. It would have been probably about 4 hours if I knew exactly what I was doing going in. You know, I struggled with it a bit before I finally took out that oil cooler. Doing it again, knowing that the oil cooler has to come out before anything else happened, it would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of headache. If you're doing this job, I would highly recommend you take your time, set a whole day aside, don't rush it, be as meticulous as you can, especially with the reassembly process. There are so many things that you could you know, pinch a line or mess up an O-ring or something like that, and then you'd have to take it all apart again. So, you know, that's my main thing, is when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm really meticulous with the reassembly process more than anything else. I charged up the AC. I only put one 12-ounce can of refrigerant in there, but it's blowing cold. I'm gonna have to charge it up more. I just put some in there to make sure that everything was working right, and it is working exactly as intended. My serpentine belt squeaks a little bit, but it got completely saturated with power steering fluid and coolant when I took that oil cooler off and the power steering line off. It all just poured all over that serpentine belt. I washed it off as much as I could with dish soap, and you know, it stopped squeaking for the most part, but it still squeaks a little bit. So the next step is I'm gonna leave the engine cover off tonight. Tomorrow I'm gonna take it to the car wash, and I'm gonna lay under there and pressure wash it and spray as much of the oil as I can off of the engine. Get all that stuff off the engine, off the accessories, off the drive belt, because there's a lot of crud and oil and stuff under there. And then once I'm done with that, then I'll put the cover back on. But you know, other than that, it's a success. I'm gonna lower the car. It's still up on the jack stand, so I'm gonna lower it now and take it for a drive, and then come back and double check my work, and then I'm going to sleep. It's been a long day.